The rain tapped against the window like 1,000 quiet knocks, blurring the yellow taxis that rushed by outside. Inside the small cafe, a young woman sat in silence. Her wheelchair was pushed close to a table where a birthday cake rested, its white frosting holding the numbers 2 and 2 in glowing candles. It was supposed to be a celebration, but the air felt heavy, almost like the room itself understood she was alone. She watched the flames flicker, and for a moment, it felt as if they were mocking her loneliness. She was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the city, the CEO of a company whose name was known in every corner of the business world. Yet, on her 22nd birthday, not a single person had come. No friends, no family, not even her father. He was too busy with meetings, too busy with numbers and profits to remember that his daughter, paralyzed from the waist down, was still alive and still waiting for love. Her hands rested in her lap, trembling slightly, not because of the cold, but because of the weight in her chest. Memories of the accident replayed in her mind. Before, she had walked through life like everyone else. Before, she had run, danced, and laughed. But one crash had taken that away, leaving her in a wheelchair, watching life move on without her. People she thought were friends had vanished. Even her father had grown distant, as if her disability had made her invisible. She looked down at the cake again. The candles glowed brightly, yet the room felt darker than ever. What was the point of celebrating when no one was there to share it? She thought of blowing out the candles just to end the moment, but her lips refused to move. Across the cafe, the door swung open. The sound of the rain grew louder for a second before fading again as the door closed. A tall man stepped in, shaking off his jacket. Beside him, a little girl in a bright yellow dress clutched a golden star wand in her tiny hand. Her laughter, soft and light, filled the quiet cafe like a sudden beam of sunshine. The man, clearly her father, carried a small box wrapped in white paper and tied with a golden ribbon. They were wet from the rain, but their faces were warm, alive, and filled with something the young woman had not felt in a long time. Care. The little girl's eyes wandered, scanning the cafe. Then, they landed on the lonely woman with the cake. The candles caught her attention, and she tugged gently at her father's sleeve. He followed her gaze, and his expression softened as he saw the wheelchair, the empty chairs, the untouched cake. For a moment he hesitated, unsure if he should approach. But the girl had already decided. She began walking toward the lonely table, her golden shoes tapping gently against the wooden floor. The young woman looked up, startled. She wasn't used to strangers approaching her, especially not with such open smiles. The little girl stopped by the table, tilting her head, as if studying her face. Then she asked, in the innocent tone only a child could use, "Why are you sitting alone on your birthday?" The question struck her like lightning. She blinked, unsure how to answer. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She wanted to tell the truth, that she was forgotten, that she was invisible, that even her own father didn't have time for her, but the words weighed too much to carry. Before she could respond, the man caught up with his daughter. He looked at the young woman, his voice kind and respectful, not pitying, just human. "I'm sorry if she's bothering you," he said gently. "She noticed your cake. We didn't mean to intrude." The young woman shook her head slowly. "She's not bothering me." Her voice cracked slightly, as if unused. She cleared her throat and added softly, "It's nice, actually. Most people don't even notice me anymore." The man studied her face, the loneliness hiding beneath her calm tone. Then he glanced at the cake, the unlit hope in her eyes, and made a choice. He crouched down to his daughter's level and whispered something. The little girl's eyes lit up, and she turned back with a wide smile. "Can we join you?" the girl asked brightly, holding up her golden star wand as if she was offering magic itself. The woman's heart skipped a beat. For the first time that day, maybe for the first time in years, Someone had asked to share a moment with her. She didn't know how to respond, but she felt a warmth rising in her chest, a warmth that pushed against the cold walls she had built. Around herself, the man waited patiently, holding the gift box in his hands. He didn't push, didn't insist, but his eyes told her something important. He saw her. Not the chair, not the disability, but her. The candles flickered as if waiting. 2. Slowly, her lips curved into a small smile. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, you can join me." And just like that, the loneliness in the cafe shifted. The rain still fell outside, but inside, something brighter began to grow. The chairs scraped softly as the father pulled one close to the table. He set the gift box carefully down, while his daughter eagerly climbed onto the other chair. The young woman in the wheelchair watched them, still surprised that strangers had chosen to sit with her. The cafe felt less empty now, though she struggled to believe this moment was real. The little girl leaned closer to the cake, eyes wide. "Wow," she whispered, pointing at the candles. 22, that's a big number." The young woman's lips twitched into another small smile. "It feels big," she said gently, her voice still a little shaky. The father glanced at her, his tone respectful. "Happy birthday," he said. "I hope you don't mind us joining. My daughter thought no one should celebrate alone." The words wrapped around her like a blanket. No one had said happy birthday to her all day. Not her friends, not her family, not even her father who ran the company that paid for this expensive cafe. She swallowed hard, her eyes burning, but she forced herself to smile back. "Thank you, I don't mind." The little girl tapped the table with her star wand. "Are you going to make a wish?" she asked brightly. The woman froze. Wishes. She hadn't thought about those since before the accident. Back then, she wished for small things: passing exams, new shoes, the chance to travel. Now wishing felt useless. What could she ask for? Her legs back? Her father's love? Friends who actually cared? She bit her lip, staring at the flames. Father seemed to notice her hesitation. He leaned back slightly, his voice calm. "Sometimes it's not about the wish coming true," he said. "It's about letting yourself hope again." His words touched something inside her. Slowly, she closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to whisper a silent wish. Not for her legs, not even for her father. She wished for something simpler, someone who would stay. Someone who would see her. When she opened her eyes, the little girl clapped her hands. "Blow them out." She squeeled. She took a deep breath and blew. The candles flickered and then went dark, leaving behind a thin trail of smoke that curled into the air. The little girl cheered as if it were her own birthday, clapping her hands in delight. The father smiled warmly. "That was perfect," he said. The young woman laughed softly. It felt strange, foreign, like music she had forgotten. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. The waiter, noticing the small group, came over and offered to cut the cake. The woman nodded, and soon slices were placed in front of them. The little girl dug in with excitement, her face lighting up with every bite. The father ate slowly, watching his daughter more than the cake. The woman took a bite too, tasting the sweetness, and felt a piece of the heaviness in her chest melt away. Between bites, the little girl looked up. "Do you live here?" she asked curiously. The woman shook her head. "Not far," she said. "But I spend a lot of time in this cafe. It feels quiet, and I like the window." The father nodded. "Quiet is good sometimes," he said. "But too much quiet can be heavy." She met his eyes, and in them she saw understanding. She didn't know his story, but something in his gaze told her he knew what loneliness felt like. The little girl wiped frosting from her lips with the back of her hand. "Daddy says birthdays are for family," she announced proudly. Then she looked at the woman. "So today, you can be part of ours." The words pierced her heart. She tried to respond, but emotion caught in her throat. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. "That's very kind of you," she managed to whisper. The father smiled at his daughter's boldness. "She's right," he said softly. "No one should spend their birthday alone. Not if we can help it." They continued eating, the rain still pattering softly outside. But inside, the world felt lighter, warmer. The little girl told stories about her school, about how she wanted to be a princess with a star wand that could grant wishes. She waved it around, pretending to grant one for the woman. "Now you're happy," she declared. The woman laughed again, covering her mouth. "I think your magic works," she said. The father chuckled. "Careful, she might start charging for wishes soon." For a long while they talked, laughed, and shared cake as if they had known each other longer than a few minutes. The woman felt something stirring in her heart, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since before the accident. Belonging. As the candles burned low and the last bites of cake disappeared, the father checked his watch. He looked apologetic. "We should probably head home soon," he said. "But before we go..." He pushed the gift box gently across the table. The woman's eyes widened. "For me?" He nodded. "Yes, my daughter insisted we bring a present today, though she didn't know who it was for." Maybe she already knew. The little girl beamed. "Open it," she urged. Her hands trembled as she untied the golden ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a simple but beautiful music box, carved with delicate patterns. She wound it slowly, and as it played a soft melody, tears welled in her eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." The father's voice was gentle. "Sometimes small things can remind us we're not as alone as we think." She nodded, clutching the box to her chest. For the first time in years, her birthday felt real. Not because of the cake, not because of the candles, but because someone had chosen to see her. The music from the little box lingered in the air even after it stopped playing. The young woman held it close, her fingertips brushing against the carved details as if afraid it might vanish. For years she had collected expensive gifts from her father's assistants, jewelry and designer clothes, but none of them had carried the weight of this simple wooden box. It wasn't the item itself, it was the thought, the heart behind it. The father noticed the way her eyes softened when she looked at the gift. His daughter leaned over the table, resting her chin on her hands. "Do you like it?" she asked, her voice full of hope. "I love it," the woman whispered honestly. "It's the best gift I've ever received." The little girl grinned with pride. "See, Daddy? I told you she would like it." Her father chuckled and ruffled her hair. "Yes, you were right." The young woman smiled faintly, but as she placed the music box carefully back into the wrapping, a shadow crept across her mind. Her father would never understand a gift like this. To him, everything was about appearances, about power, about deals that added up to profit. He had forgotten what it meant to give something just to make another person smile. She pushed the thought away before it spoiled the warmth of the moment. When the waiter returned with the bill, the father quickly reached for it. She raised her hand. "Please, you don't need to. It's my birthday." "Let me pay," but he shook his head firmly. "It's our treat. Sometimes kindness is all someone can give. Let us give it." Her lips parted in surprise. Then she closed them again and nodded. Gratitude pressed against her chest so tightly she thought it might break her. They rose from the table. The father helped his daughter into her raincoat and slipped on his own. The woman wheeled herself toward the cafe door, and the little girl ran ahead to hold it open. Rain still fell, soft but steady, painting the streets with silver light. Cars rushed past, horns echoing faintly in the distance. They stood under the cafe awning, hesitating as if none of them truly wanted to part ways. The little girl finally broke the silence. "Can we see you again?" she asked with her usual boldness. The woman froze. No one ever asked her that anymore. She was always the one left behind, forgotten when gatherings ended. Her voice trembled as she answered, If you want to." The father nodded. "We'd like that. This place seems to mean something to you. Maybe next week, same time?" Her eyes lit up despite herself. "Yes, I'd like that." They said their goodbyes, and as she watched them walk away, the little girl skipping happily beside her father, something inside her shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't counting down the minutes until she could return home and hide under her blanket. She was already waiting for tomorrow, for next week, for the promise of not being forgotten. When she returned to the large, empty apartment that night, the silence still echoed, but it no longer felt as heavy. She placed the music box on her bedside table and wound it again. As the melody played softly, she thought of the girl's laughter and the father's kind eyes. For once, she fell asleep smiling. The days that followed carried her through routines she usually dreaded. Physical therapy, endless hours in a wheelchair. The occasional public appearance where her father paraded her like a symbol of strength, while never really looking at her. But this time, she had something to look forward to. A week later, the cafe felt different the moment she rolled inside. She searched the tables with quiet hope, and her heart leaped when she saw the little girl waving wildly from the corner. The father gave her a polite nod, and she wheeled over, her cheeks warm with a smile she couldn't hold back. "You came!" The girl shouted happily, bouncing in her chair. "Of course," she said softly. "I promised, didn't I?" The girl reached across the table and touched her hand. "Now you're part of our family." The father cleared his throat, amused. "Careful, she adopts people quickly." The woman laughed, though the sound was tinged with emotion. No one had ever claimed her like that before. Not since before the accident. They ordered drinks and snacks, talking about small things at first. The little girl shared stories of her school, how she wanted to be both a teacher and a princess, how she liked to sing at night before bed. The woman listened with delight, asking questions, laughing, and letting the child's innocent joy fill the spaces of her heart that had been empty for too long. Eventually, the father asked about her life. His tone wasn't prying, just gentle curiosity. She hesitated, unsure how much to share, but then something in his calm eyes gave her courage. "I wasn't always in a wheelchair," she began quietly. "There was an accident. My father. He tried to help, but mostly he just buried himself in work. I think he doesn't know how to look at me anymore." The father nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Pain changes people," he said. "Sometimes it makes them run, sometimes it makes them hide. But it doesn't erase who we are." His words struck deep. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. For once, she didn't feel judged. She felt seen. The little girl, unaware of the weight in their conversation, broke in with a grin. "You don't need a crown to be a princess," she declared. "You just need people who love you, and we do." The woman's eyes filled with tears she couldn't hold back. She reached for the girl's small hand and squeezed it gently. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, as they parted again, she realized something unexpected. The accident had taken her legs, her freedom, her friends, but perhaps it hadn't taken everything. Maybe, just maybe, it had led her to the one thing she had always needed: kindness that asked for nothing in return. The next week came faster than she expected. Every day between their meetings, she thought of the little girl's laughter and the father's steady kindness. The music box sat on a nightstand, and each evening she wound it to hear the melody. It reminded her that she was no longer invisible. When she arrived at the cafe this time, she saw them already waiting. The little girl waved both arms wildly, nearly knocking over her glass of juice. The father chuckled at his daughter's excitement. "Careful," he said softly, but his eyes lit up when he saw the young woman approach. "You're here." The girl cheered as the woman wheeled to the table. "I wouldn't miss it," she said, smiling warmly. The conversation started easily, flowing like water. They talked about the weather, the rain that had returned, and the little girl's school play, where she was going to play a sunflower. The woman laughed at the child's dramatic imitation of practicing her sunflower dance. But as the laughter faded, the woman turned to the father. "You always ask about me," she said gently. "But what about you? You come here every week too. Why this cafe? Why now?" For a moment, silence fell. His daughter leaned against him, humming to herself, unaware of the shift. The father's face grew thoughtful, almost heavy. He glanced at his daughter, then back at the woman. "I suppose I owe you the truth," he said slowly. She waited quietly, sensing this was not something he shared often. "I wasn't always a single father," he began. His voice was calm, but there was a weight beneath it. "My wife passed away 3 years ago. It was sudden. A sickness we didn't see coming. One day she was fine, the next, gone. My daughter was too young to understand, but she still cries some nights, asking where her mother is." The woman's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this. She had imagined maybe he was divorced, maybe distant from his partner, but not this. He continued, his eyes steady even as pain flickered behind them. "After she passed, people disappeared from our lives. Friends stopped visiting. Family made excuses. I think they didn't know what to say. It was just me and my little girl, trying to figure out how to keep going." The woman lowered her gaze, her heart aching. His story echoed her own loneliness in a different way. She thought of her father, too busy with work to notice her pain. She thought of the silence in her home. For the first time, she realized that loneliness wore many faces. The little girl, sensing the sadness, wrapped her arms around her father's arm and whispered, "But we're okay, Daddy. We have each other." He smiled softly and kissed her forehead. "Yes, we do." Then he looked back at the woman. "And maybe now we have you too." Her chest tightened. She blinked quickly, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. "I don't know why you chose to sit with me that day," she whispered, "but I'm glad you did." The father shook his head gently. "It wasn't a choice. My daughter saw you, and she knew. Sometimes children see what adults forget to notice." The little girl grinned proudly. "I told Daddy you needed family." The woman laughed through her tears. "You were right." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking more deeply than before. The father shared stories about his wife, about how she loved to sing while cooking, about how she left little notes hidden in his jacket pockets. The woman listened with care, as if each story was a fragile treasure in return. She shared more. About her own life, about the accident, about how the world had grown distant, about her father who cared more about his company than her heart. The man listened without judgment, nodding slowly, his expression filled with empathy. By the time the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, they had both laid pieces of their souls on the table. As they prepared to leave, the little girl tugged on the woman's sleeve. "Can you come to my school play next week?" she asked eagerly. "I'll be the brightest sunflower, and I want you to see me." The woman's heart swelled. No one had invited her to anything in years. "I would love to," she said softly. The father gave a gentle smile. "She'll hold you to that." When they parted ways, the woman wheeled home under the fading light with a heart that felt strangely full. The silence in her apartment didn't crush her this time. She sat by the window, watching the city lights, and thought of the little girl's invitation. For the first time in years, she looked forward to something outside her walls. That night, as she wound the music box, she realized something even deeper. Their lives had been broken in different ways, yet somehow, their brokenness fit together, creating something whole. The school gym buzzed with laughter, chatter, and the sound of parents settling into their folding chairs. Bright paper decorations hung from the walls, shaped like suns, flowers, and butterflies. Children in colorful costumes darted around the stage, their voices bubbling with excitement. The young woman sat near the front, her wheelchair neatly positioned in the aisle. She wore a soft blue dress and had brushed her hair carefully that morning. For the first time in years, she had somewhere to be, and she wanted to look her best. When she spotted the little girl on stage, her heart swelled. The child wore a bright yellow costume with green leaves sewn around the edges, her golden shoes shining under the lights. She twirled happily, waving her star wand as if it were part of the play. The sight made the woman laugh softly, joy rising in her chest. The father sat beside her, leaning forward with quiet pride. "She's been practicing for weeks," he whispered. "She wanted this to be perfect." "She already is," the woman whispered back. The music started, and the play unfolded. The children acted out a story about a garden full of sunflowers, bees, and butterflies. The little girl, standing tall in the middle, smiled so brightly it seemed to outshine the decorations around her. When her turn came to say her line, she looked directly at the woman in the wheelchair. "Sunflowers always turn to the light," she declared in her sweet voice. The woman's throat tightened. The words felt meant for her, a reminder she didn't know she needed. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't look away. When the play ended, the gym filled with applause. Parents cheered, children bowed, and the little girl waved proudly toward her father and the woman. They clapped until their hands stung, their smiles wide. After the performance, the children ran to find their families. The little girl rushed straight into her father's arms, then turned and hugged the woman tightly around her waist. "Did you see me? Did you see me?" she squealed. "You were amazing," the woman said, laughing through tears. "The brightest sunflower of all." The father smiled, his eyes soft. "She wanted you here. It meant a lot to her." "It meant a lot to me too," the woman admitted quietly. Before they could say more, a tall man in a sharp suit entered the gym. He carried himself with authority, his steps commanding attention. The woman's smile faded when she recognized him, her father, the CEO. He scanned the crowd until his eyes landed on her. His brow furrowed slightly, surprised to see her among strangers. He walked over, his presence towering, his voice low but firm. "What are you doing here?" The woman's hands tightened on her wheelchair. "I was invited." The CEO's eyes flicked toward the father and child, suspicion rising. "By them?" he asked coldly. The father rose slowly, calm but steady. "Yes, my daughter invited her." "She wanted your daughter to have company." The CEO's jaw tightened. "My daughter doesn't need pity from strangers." The woman's chest burned at his words. She lifted her chin, her voice shaking but strong. "This isn't pity. This is kindness. Something you've forgotten how to give." The gym grew quieter as people nearby noticed the tension. The father placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, keeping her close. His voice remained respectful, but firm. "Sir, with all respect, your daughter deserves more than a birthday spent alone. She deserves people who see her, not her chair." The CEO's gaze hardened, but the woman didn't flinch. For years she had stayed silent, hidden in the shadow of his power. But not this time. "I won't apologize for letting them into my life," she said. "For once, I feel alive again." The silence stretched until the little girl, sensing the weight of the moment, stepped forward. She held up her star wand and looked at the CEO with innocent eyes. "She's not alone anymore," she said softly. "She has us." The CEO froze. Something in the child's words seemed to cut through his pride. His eyes shifted to his daughter, and for the first time in years, he saw the tears shining in her eyes. Tears not of weakness but of longing. He looked away, unable to speak. The father guided his daughter gently. "Come on," he said softly to her. "Let's give them a moment." The little girl hesitated, but obeyed, staying close to her father's side as they stepped aside. The CEO finally spoke, his voice quieter now. "You think I don't care," he said. "But I built everything for you. For your future." The woman shook her head, her voice firm. You built it for yourself. If you cared, you would have been there when I needed you. Not today, not last week, not after the accident. I was alone until they came." Her father stood stiff, his pride battling with guilt. Around them, the gym returned to its noise, but in that small corner, time seemed to pause. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel small in front of him. She felt strong. Not because she could stand, but because she had found people who gave her strength. The CEO said nothing more, his silence heavy. He turned and walked away, his shoulders rigid, leaving her with the quiet victory of finally being seen, even if he refused to admit it. The father and little girl returned, their expressions worried. "Are you all right?" the man asked. The woman nodded, though her eyes shimmered. "Yes, better than ever." And as she said it, she realized it was true. The ride home after the play felt heavier than before. The young woman sat in her wheelchair near the window of the cafe where they had agreed to meet again, her heart still replaying the confrontation with her father. His words cut, but the silence afterward had cut deeper. She wondered if she had been too harsh, or if finally speaking the truth had simply been long overdue. The father and his daughter arrived soon after, bringing warmth with them as always. The little girl rushed forward, holding the star wand like a banner of victory. "Did you see me today?" she asked eagerly. The woman smiled, brushing away her lingering sadness. "Yes, I saw you. You were perfect." The father studied her face, reading the emotions she tried to hide. "He hurt you," he said quietly without asking. She lowered her gaze. "He's my father. I don't think he knows how to love me anymore. He only sees what I lost, not what I still am." The man leaned closer, his voice steady. "Then he's blind, because I see you. My daughter sees you, and you are so much more than your chair." Tears filled her eyes, but they were softer this time. "You've given me more in a few weeks than he has in years. I thought my life was over, but you showed me it isn't." The little girl climbed into her lap without hesitation, her tiny arms wrapping around her neck. "You're family now," she said simply. "No matter what anyone says." The woman held her close, overwhelmed by the simple truth in the child's words. For so long she had been starving for love, and here it was, offered freely by a man. And his daughter who had no reason to give it other than kindness. The days that followed were different. The woman no longer spent her nights staring at the ceiling in silence. She visited the cafe often, sometimes with them, sometimes alone, but always with hope in her heart. She began to laugh more, to talk more, to live again. And then, one evening, as the sun dipped low and the city glowed with golden light, her father appeared at her door. His suit was as sharp as always, his posture rigid, but his eyes were less certain. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the wheelchair between them a reminder of all the unspoken years. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, his voice low. "I thought building a world of wealth would be enough for you. I didn't see that what you needed was me." Her throat tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "You left me alone when I needed you most. I don't know if I can forgive that." His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he looked smaller. "I don't ask for forgiveness today. I only ask for a chance to be in your life again. To learn how to be your father." The woman studied him carefully, unsure if she could trust his sudden change. But then she remembered the little girl's words, "Sunflowers always turn to the light." Maybe people could change too. She nodded slowly. "If you want to try, then try. But I won't let you take away the family I've found." He looked confused, until she gestured to the music box on her table, a gift from the man and child who had seen her when no one else did. For the first time, her father seemed to understand. The weeks that followed were a careful balance. Her father began visiting her more often, awkward at first but slowly softening. He joined her at the cafe once, and though he remained stiff in his seat, He watched as the little girl twirled around in her sunflower dress and made his daughter laugh. Something in his eyes changed that day, perhaps a memory of the girl she had been before the accident, or perhaps a glimpse of the woman she had become. But no matter how her father tried, the truth remained. It was the stranger's kindness that had saved her first. On her next birthday, the cafe was no longer quiet. Balloons decorated the windows, the cake was bigger, and the music box played softly in the corner. The little girl sat on her lap, laughing, while her father and her own father shared polite words across the table. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the sound of joy around her. She had once believed her life was over, that she was invisible, forgotten even by the man who had raised her. But here she was, surrounded by people who chose her, not because of wealth, not because of duty, but because they saw her heart. When the candles on the cake were lit, the little girl squeezed her hand. "Make a wish," the woman smiled. This time, her wish was simple. She didn't wish for her legs back, or for her father to suddenly become perfect. She wished only that kindness would stay, that this new family would remain in her life. She blew out the candles, and as the smoke curled upward, the room filled with cheers and laughter. Her heart, once heavy with loneliness, was light again. Not because her world had been fixed, but because someone had cared enough to step into it, and that was enough.